What if the ultimate secret to surviving a broken economy isn't working harder, but actively choosing to become the one thing society despises most? Have we been completely brainwashed about the true value of the hustle? Let's look at what is happening right under our noses. Right now, as you watch this video in May of 2026, the ruling political party of the world's most populous nation, a massive, multi-billion-dollar machine, has just been officially overtaken on the internet. They weren't beaten by a traditional rival. They weren't outspent by a charismatic billionaire. They were beaten by a movement started by a 30-year-old student, sitting nearly 8,000 miles away inside a Boston University dorm room. They don't have a super PAC. They don't have a headquarters. Their official mascot is a literal cockroach, and they are calling themselves the Cockroach Janta Party. To the mainstream media, to the older generations, and to the political elite, this looks like a bizarre internet prank. A flash in the pan. Way. They are sitting in newsrooms calling it a lazy rebellion, a sarcastic, pathetic joke by an entitled generation of chronically online youth, who would rather post memes about insects than hand out their resumes. But the political elite are wrong. Completely and dangerously wrong. What you are looking at right now is not a joke. It is a psychological mass casualty event. We've all been sold the exact same narrative since we were children. Study hard. Pass your exams. Get a prestigious degree. Put your head down, do the work, and the system will reward you with a secure job, a house, and a good life. But what happens when that fundamental social contract doesn't just bend, but utterly shatters? By the end of this video, I am going to prove to you that this viral cockroach obsession is actually a highly sophisticated neurological defense mechanism. You are going to discover exactly why your brain feels so exhausted, why the traditional concept of the hustle is mathematically dead, and why embracing the identity of the most despised insect on planet Earth is actually the ultimate reclamation of human power. You aren't lazy. Your brain is actively defending itself against a broken system. To understand the psychology of this movement, we have to look at the exact moment the collective mind of a generation snapped. On May 15, 2026, during a Supreme Court hearing in India, the Chief Justice allegedly made a passing remark. He compared unemployed youth, social media users, and activists who attack the system to cockroaches and parasites of society. He meant it as the ultimate insult. When a person in extreme power calls you a cockroach, they are telling you that you are worthless. They are telling you that you are a nuisance, a filthy, bottom-feeding insect that needs to be stepped on and swept away so the real adults can run the world. Normally, when a high-ranking official insults the youth, there is a predictable psychological response. There is outrage. There are angry street protests. There are trending hashtags demanding immediate apologies. But this time, the youth didn't get angry. They didn't demand an apology. They did something much, much more dangerous. They agreed. Within 24 hours of that comment, Abhijit Dick, a graduate student in Boston, launched the Cockroach Janta Party website. The official tagline? The voice of the lazy and unemployed. To join this new political party, you had to meet 4 strict, highly satirical criteria. You had to be unemployed. You had to be lazy. You had to be chronically online. And you had to possess the unique ability to rant professionally. Within days, hundreds of thousands of people signed up. The Instagram account blew past 11 million followers, obliterating the ruling party's digital footprint. Members of parliament, actual elected officials, started jokingly begging to join. Why? Because the psychological pressure on the modern youth has reached a terminal boiling point. Think about your daily reality. You study for years, sacrificing your youth for an entrance exam, only to find out the test paper was leaked and sold to a corrupt syndicate. You take on crushing debt to get a master's degree, only to compete with thousands of equally qualified people for an entry-level job that barely pays your rent. And in the face of this crushing, suffocating economic pressure, what does the internet do? It laughs. It posts a picture of a cockroach wearing a tiny little suit, and it pledges allegiance to the dirt. To understand why the human brain reacts this way, I want to open a loop and tell you a story about a man who lived over 2,000 years ago. His name was Diogenes. He was an ancient Greek philosopher, but he didn't write pretentious books or lecture in grand marble halls. Diogenes lived in a literal clay barrel in the middle of the street. He ate scraps off the ground. He famously urinated in public and barked at passing politicians like a rabid dog. The elites of Athens thought he was completely insane. They called him the dog, an insult he gladly accepted. Hold on to that image. The man in the barrel. The dog. Because what Diogenes was doing in 300 BC is exactly what the Cockroach Janta Party is doing today. But to connect those dots, and to prove why this isn't just a meme, we have to look at what is happening inside the neurochemistry of your brain right now. In clinical psychology, there is a foundational concept called learned helplessness. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Martin Seligman ran a famous, and somewhat cruel, experiment. He placed a group of dogs in a box where the floor would occasionally give them a light electric shock. At first, the dogs reacted exactly how you would expect. They jumped around. They barked. They actively tried to find a way out. They tried to fix the problem. But the box was rigged. There was absolutely no escape. After realizing that no matter what they did, no matter how hard they jumped, the shock was coming anyway, the dogs simply stopped trying. They lay down on the floor and took it. But here is the truly terrifying part. Later, when Seligman opened the door to the box and gave them a clear, unobstructed path to escape, the dogs still didn't move. Their brains had literally rewired themselves to believe that action was pointless. They had learned to be helpless. Now, I want you to look at the modern economy for a recent graduate. You are told to pass the hardest exams in the world. Shock. The papers are leaked by billionaires. You are told to get a degree. Shock. You graduate into a saturated market where artificial intelligence is actively hunting your entry-level job. You are told to hustle and grind. Shock. Inflation outpaces your salary, housing becomes a luxury item, and the political class calls you a parasite for daring to complain. The social contract is entirely broken. When traditional pathways to success fail repeatedly, the human brain enters a severe state of cognitive dissonance. You are doing what society told you is right, but you are actively getting punished for it. So what happens when millions of young people realize they are trapped in the shock box? When they realize the game is fundamentally rigged, they don't just lie down. Humans are far too complex for that. They adapt. And this brings us to the most powerful psychological pivot of the 21st century, absurdism. If the rules of the game are completely absurd, the only logical, self-preserving response is to become absurd yourself. But before we uncover exactly how this lowly bug became the ultimate psychological weapon against the elite, I need you to understand something crucial. If you want to stop feeling crazy, if you want to understand the invisible psychological systems that are secretly controlling your behavior, your wallet, and your future, you need to subscribe to this channel right now. We decode the matrix of human behavior every single week. And what we are about to uncover next changes everything about how you view your own ambition. Let's go back to our man in the barrel. Diogenes. Why did he live in the dirt? Why did he bark at people? Diogenes wasn't crazy. He was protesting. He realized that the high society of ancient Athens was corrupt, materialistic, and deeply hypocritical. He believed that participating in their civilized society was a trap. If you care about status, you can be controlled by people who have the power to take that status away. By embracing the identity of a stray dog, Diogenes became immune to their control. You cannot cancel a man who lives in a barrel. You cannot take away the wealth of a man who willingly eats garbage. Diogenes weaponized the lowest possible social status to make himself completely untouchable. And this is the exact psychological mechanism driving the Cockroach Janta Party today. The elite establishment looks at this digital trend and they sneer. They say, "Look at these lazy kids, giving up. They're literally comparing themselves to pests. They have no ambition." But they are entirely missing the metaphor. They don't understand the psychology of the shield. What is the one defining, universal characteristic of a cockroach? It is indestructible. You can step on it. You can starve it in the dark. You can drop a literal nuclear bomb on its head, and it will crawl out of the radioactive ash 3 days later, perfectly fine. When young people, facing severe unemployment, zero prospect of home ownership, and the constant, looming threat of algorithmic layoffs, brand themselves as cockroaches, they are not saying they are worthless. They are looking directly at the ruling class and saying, "You cannot destroy me." This is the climax of the psychological breakdown. By embracing the cockroach, this generation is executing a massive, collective cognitive reframing. They are taking the trauma of learned helplessness, the anxiety of the rigged box, and forging it into a suit of armor. Think about the Cockroach Janta Party's official manifesto. While they joke endlessly about being lazy, their actual political demands are incredibly sharp. They demand world-class, free education. They demand true, unforgiving accountability for exam paper leaks. They demand a strict ban on judges taking cushy government seats after they retire. They are using an absurd joke as a Trojan horse for deadly serious political reform. If the corporate world demands that you be a shiny, perfect, endlessly productive machine, only to fire you the second profits dip by 1%, then identifying as a gross, unkillable bug is the ultimate act of defiance. It is a psychological reclamation of power. You cannot fire a cockroach. You cannot intimidate a cockroach by calling it a parasite. A cockroach doesn't care about your prestige, your corporate ladder, or your GDP, because a cockroach operates entirely outside of your manufactured system. This isn't laziness. It is an evolutionary adaptation to a highly toxic economic environment. The internet is using humor and satire as a societal pressure valve. When the psychological pressure gets too high, when the disparity between the rich and the poor becomes too cartoonish to ignore, and the people in power openly mock the struggling youth, humanity has always turned to the grotesque to survive. We saw it after World War I with the Dadaist art movement, where artists embraced pure nonsense because the logical world had just slaughtered millions of people. Today, Abhijit Dipke didn't just create a meme from his dorm room in Boston. He created a lifeboat. He gave millions of exhausted, burnt-out people permission to step off the hamster wheel, to look at a system that is fundamentally broken and say, out loud, "I am no longer tying my self-worth to your broken metrics." We are finally giving up on the lie of the traditional hustle. And in doing so, we are finding a bizarre, twisted kind of peace. So, the next time you see a news anchor complaining about the lazy rebellion, or you see a viral post from the Cockroach Janta Party crossing your feed, you will know the truth. You are watching a generation adapt to survive. You are watching the human brain protect itself from systemic trauma through the beautiful, chaotic, unstoppable power of absurdism. The social contract is dead. The hustle is over. Long live the cockroach. If you want to keep seeing through the illusions of modern society, and if you want to arm yourself with the psychological tools needed to navigate this incredibly chaotic world, hit the subscribe button right now. Join this community of thinkers. Because the world is only going to get weirder, and you are going to need a guide to survive it. Stay resilient. Stay absurd. And I will see you in the next one.